Hey everybody, this is Rykard here again, and today I'm bringing you another Pokemon Online battle I had the other day using a team that I randomly generated using one of the random Pokemon generators that you can find online. As you can see, my team is kind of a mix of UU and RU Pokemon, whereas my opponent is using a full UU team. I just did the regular challenge feature. I didn't actually try to find a match against any specific person. But just to go over some of the guys on my team real quick. The Smeargle is obviously there to put someone to sleep and set up spikes, as well as it has Seismic Toss on it just to do some damage to something if it needs to. Registeel's a Parafusion set with counter, and that's kind of cool in my opinion. The Mesprit is a Choice Scarf set. It's a physical Choice Scarf set. It also packs Trick to potentially cripple things that are wanting to, be kind of stally in a sense. The Wailord is a max special defensive Pokemon, so it's going to be obviously there to take special hits. It also has Roar to phase things out. Swampert's there to set up rocks. It's also max physical attack, and I have Waterfall and Substitute and Focus Punch on it, which is actually a fairly interesting combination and can work out pretty cool. I only get to show it off like once in this battle, but no big deal. And the Butterfree is there to put something to sleep with Sweet Powder and set up with Quiver Dance. So I got a pretty interesting mix. It's not really the best team possible, but it's a fairly unique team and it can do some damage. I've actually had quite a bit of luck using it. I've just used it for a couple of battles until I found one I really liked. My opponent, however, is using a fairly threatening UU team. Everything on it is kind of scary in my opinion, especially with like a ton of guys on my team that, aren't meant to handle the UU Pokemon per se. The thing I'm most worried about though is the Suicune, because I don't really have anything to take it out. The only way I can beat that is if I get up, Toxic on it or something like that, but that's going to be very difficult. But we're going to start off right now, and I'm going to lead off with my Swampert. Well, this leads off with its Mismagius. Now, I am fearful of the Will-O-Wisp, so I just go for Waterfall right away just to get some damage on it, because I also don't want it setting up substitutes and things like that. But it just switches out to a Suicune, and I don't really know what I'm going to do about the Suicune right now. So I just go ahead and set up my Stealth Rock while this thing sets up Calm Mind. And now this already is worrying me because this thing could potentially sweep my entire team if it gets up a couple of Calm Minds. So I go right now and switch out into my Wailord because I realize that this is probably the best thing to take a special hit since it is max HP and max special defense. And it goes for Hidden Power, and I'm, for whatever reason, thinking it's Electric at the time, because that's usually what water types usually have for their Hidden Power. But I later find out it's Grass. But anyways, I bring in Wailord because I need to roar this thing out, because I cannot deal with this right now. So finally I do that, and then the Rotom comes in, so I immediately go for Protect, just to get a little bit of leftovers recovery, and potentially scout out what move it wants to use. Because if it does want to go for Volt Switch, I can just switch out into Swampert. Apparently this thing is Scarfed, which I was kind of assuming to begin with, but that was later confirmed in the match. But here he actually predicts my switch back to Swampert to absorb the Volt Switch and goes out into Suicune. So here I'm still thinking, or for whatever reason, I'm under the impression that the Suicune has Hidden Power Electric. So I feel like I'm pretty safe. So right now I'm going to go for Substitute while he goes for Calm Mind again. So I'm already, not knowing what I'm going to do about the Suicune because this thing is going to be a pain in the butt if it wants to keep setting up. But luckily for me, on this next turn, when I Focus Punch it, I find out that it does quite a bit of damage to this thing, as the Suicune again goes for Hidden Power Grass, which I'm now aware of that it is Hidden Power Grass. I should have known that earlier when I went for it on the Swampert, but it wasn't too big of a deal because I managed to play around it somehow. But the Focus Punch does a nice chunk of damage on the Suicune. So I know that right now I'm pretty safe in switching out into Registeel. So I do that because if it wants to go for Hidden Power Grass, it's not going to do too much. And I do have a couple of things to deal with the Suicune because I obviously have access to Swagger, which can be a pain in the butt on a special attacker because it's not getting any boosts per se to it because it's not going to be using its physical attack. But he actually switches out to his Bronzong right now while I Swagger it on the switch, which is great for me. So now I'm pretty free to set up a Thunder Wave on this thing to get some Parafusion action going, which ends up, working out amazingly for me because on this turn right here, he's actually going to hit himself in Confusion, which you can see right there. Okay, and so now I'm just going to proceed to Seismic Toss it until it dies, because I'm pretty safe in realizing that the Bronzong probably won't be able to do much damage to me. The only thing that it could potentially do to hurt my team would be to set up like Stealth Rock or something, but my team doesn't really mind it too much, except maybe for Butterfree. But anyways, luckily for me, he actually hits himself in Confusion twice, while I continue the Seismic Toss, meaning I just took out this Bronzong with the Registeel through Parafusion and Seismic Toss, which is really good, and this is actually a pretty cool set I liked a lot, and it actually worked out in a few of the other battles I had. Now he goes into Flygon here, and I stay in because I actually have counter on this Registeel, and I know that Earthquake cannot kill Registeel when it's max physical defense, except he gets a critical hit right there, which sucks, and I want it to be all awesome and counter a Earthquake from a Flygon and feel awesome about that. But anyways, I got into Butterfree now, and I just immediately go for Sleep Powder because obviously, you know, I'm assuming the Flygon is choiced, so obviously it's not going to be able to hit me, so I'm free to, you know, put something to sleep on the switch. So I got into Butterfree, and then I set up one Quiver Dance when it switches out into Machamp. And here, thinking because I have the Psychic, I would be able to actually, you know, do a ton of damage to this Machamp right now and potentially take it out. I go for it, and unfortunately, it doesn't kill and only does 73% as you see right there, and the Machamp is able to take me out with a Stone Edge, which is unfortunate. So if I actually went for Psychic to begin with, I actually could have took this out in 2 turns, which would have been awesome, but it's no big deal. The Butterfree didn't really matter too much in this battle. But I just go out into my Mesprit, who is Choice Scarfed and Physical, and I just go for Zen Headbutt. Which is great, because then I just take out the Machamp. Woohoo! Okay. So here, I'm not really sure what he's going to go into, but I'm pretty safe, because Mesprit is able to do quite a bit of physical damage to anything. So I just kind of leave it in, even though he goes into Suicune, because the only thing that it could potentially do that I wouldn't enjoy, personally, would be if the Suicune used Rest. I don't know if it had Rest, but luckily on this turn I get a flinch from the Zen Headbutt, so I never actually find out, and thankfully the second Zen Headbutt hits and is able to take out the Suicune. So now I'm actually in a really good position because nothing on this team really wants to take a physical Zen Headbutt from this Mesprit, and he just goes out into his Flygon. I'm assuming I can live in Outrage, so I just go for Zen Headbutt, and I'm faster, which means that this Flygon is probably banded, and I live in Outrage anyways, which I thought was rather odd. That means Flygon really isn't that powerful, and I guess that's why it's UU. But that means, like, I could even though it was banded, I still would have lived the Earthquake from before with my Registeel. I did a damage calc on that later, or after the fact, just to find out, because I was really curious. So I would have been able to take it out with a counter way earlier. But he just goes into his Rotom now, and his Rotom's actually faster than me. This Rotom is Scarfed. I'm actually not running max speed on the Mesprit. It's Adamant and Choice Scarf, as opposed to Jolly Choice Scarf. But he just wakes up on this turn and then Volt switches. So now here I'm actually thoroughly worried, because when he brings in the Mismagius, I'm not really sure I'm able to handle it. Because if it does have Will-O-Wisp, most of the guys on my team are physical attackers, so that will be a huge problem. So I go for Waterfall right away just to get some damage on it, and he goes for Shadow Ball, gets a crit, which doesn't really matter. And he doesn't apparently have Will-O-Wisp at all, so luckily I'm able to take it out with the Waterfall, and then the Rotom is going to come in and die to Stealth Rock, which is awesome because that gives me the game in a nice 3-0. I didn't even use Smeargle at all in this battle. That could have potentially been helpful if I had the spikes up, but I thought this was pretty fun. I like doing the RPG battles because it allows you, or it forces you to use Pokemon you normally wouldn't, and it also forces you to use some Pokemon in very, very different ways. Like, there was one time when I did it and I got a Feraligatr and I didn't need a physical or attacker anymore, so I actually ran like max special defense on the Feraligatr with Scald and Dragon Tail and Sleep Talk with Rest, and that actually turned out to be something like really good, even though that's not what you would normally use a Feraligatr to do. But if you guys have any interest in doing these, I suggest you try them out because they're a lot of fun. If you Google random Pokemon generator, you'll find like 2 right off the bat. I just use one of them because I think it's better to use because you can kind of pick the tiers. You can eliminate the NFE Pokemon that you don't really want to see at all, but if I wanted to be more like realistic with this, I could leave the NFE thing on. I also omit the Uber category because that one forces you to play in Ubers, and you don't want to be playing in Ubers when you have like a NU Pokemon because that won't really work out too well. But they're a lot of fun to do, and I suggest you guys try them out sometime. But that was the battle, so thank you Fairytale for having this with me, and I'm glad that it ended up working out in my favor. So as always, take care everyone, and goodbye.